evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I am Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on this beautiful Friday. A lot of things to talk about in the National Football League and in the National Basketball Association. More particularly, obviously, this is the NBA playoffs. We'll be talking a lot of second-round action. Going to talk about Boston in just a second. Also, why the Dallas Mavericks, it took them one game to do it, just one game, but they officially proved me right or validated what I said just on Wednesday's show about my belief in the Mavericks in the second half of the season, why I think that they are fully capable of not just winning the West, but winning the NBA championship. Never said I picked them to, but don't be shocked if they did after their Game 2 win against Oklahoma City last night. Talk about that in about 30 minutes or so. Also, gonna get into Nikola Jokic winning his third 1-2-3 MVP awards in his career. He's one of only 9 guys in the history of the game to do that, and why I think that there is a heightened sense of pressure now on Nikola Jokic. With great power comes great responsibility, or really with great accolades comes great responsibility. Talk about that in about 15 minutes. Also, I mean, no disrespect to the individual at CBS Sports who put together a list ranking all 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, but it had to be, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the worst ranking lists I've ever seen, and this is not a personal shot, but it was bad. I'll talk about that in 45 minutes, and sort of a key nuance that we need to take into consideration when ranking quarterbacks in the National Football League. Detail that in 45 minutes, and at the end of today's show, going to get into what else we got on the docket on today's show today. Yeah, we've got Boston Celtics. Talk about that in just a second. Also, of course, talking about the Suns. Sorry, I forgot about that for a second. Who just fired Frank Vogel yesterday and hired Mike Budenholzer today. They have officially set themselves back for quite some time. We've already got a comment up in here. Patrick Brown, happy Friday, everyone. Happy Mother's Day in advance. Happy, well, Patrick's not a mother, but a happy Mother's Day to all the incredible moms out there. Shout out to Patrick. Chaotic Sports on the Grid Network. Check his stuff out on the Grid Network website. His great articles for sure. But first, so Boston lost last night, and Boston did not lose last night in a nail-biting tight game at home like they've done in the past. They got absolutely humiliated in every way, shape, and form against the Cleveland Cavaliers last night in Game 2. Cavs won 118-94 to tie the series up at a game apiece, and at least for the moment, up until Game 3, they decided, or they've been able to tie the series and been able to steal home court advantage. Obviously, most importantly, this is a best-of-7 series, and the series goes back to Cleveland for Games 3 and 4. So Boston has been no lower on most people's power rankings list, or just the Vegas odds, no lower than number 2. It's always felt like, okay, it's going to be Denver and it's going to be Boston. Well, Denver is... they've got their season on the line tonight in Minnesota. Very excited for that game at 9:30 Eastern. That's going to be one of the more fascinating games of these NBA playoffs start to finish that I'm very excited to see. But the Boston Celtics, 64 wins. They upped it from 57 wins in 2023, and I believe they had 51 wins, if I'm not mistaken, in 2022. So they've gotten better and better and better. So is their star player, and I believe to be at least borderline superstar in Jason Tatum. They've upgraded the starting 5. Derek White has gotten better. They've added Porzingis. Jaylen Brown is a multi-time All-Star. But they had this weird habit, and I feel like I've been one of the few that's talked about this dating back to 2022 when they made the finals, in this really impressive sort of 3-year streak for Boston. They're not that good of a home team in the playoffs. They're just not. We can show you the numbers. The home numbers and the road numbers. Here's the home numbers for the Boston Celtics since the 22 playoffs. 107 points per game, 115 offensive rating. They shoot about 47% for the field, 36.5% from 3. They give up about 103 points per game, defensive rating at 110. They have a net rating of 5.2. And you see down there, most importantly, 14-14. They're a 500 team at home in the postseason. You look on the road, it's kind of weird. Some of the numbers are better, some of the numbers are worse. But they're 16-7. Think about that, folks. 16-7 on the road, away from home in the playoffs. Why is that? I'll tell you exactly why. Because I think the Boston Celtics, you say, well, what about Jason Tatum? Does he play better at home or better on the road? Well, Tatum's kind of the same guy. I've got the stats on my phone here. Jason Tatum at home in the playoffs, his last 28 games. 28-5, 8-6. Last 21 or so road playoff games, 25, 9-5. Basically the same guy. Efficiency is relatively similar. I don't think this is a Tatum thing, a Brown thing, a Celtics roster construction thing. I'm not even totally sure to a degree if it's even that much of a coaching thing, while I have been critical of Joe Mazzulla. I think this is we get this about once every few years in any of the sports, where you have that one team that really plays down to their competition if they're significantly favored or significantly more talented. But if they're playing a team just as good or better, they show up, they come out to play. It's weird. I think Boston fits into that category. You say, well, isn't that kind of a little bit of a front runner? Well, I can't call the Celtics a front runner. I heard them compared to the Dallas Cowboys today. Boston's accomplished way more in the last 3 years in Dallas. Dallas has yet to get to a conference title game. The Boston Celtics have gotten to 2 conference finals. We'll see if they get to this one to make it 3 in a row. 5 out of the last 7 conference finals, by the way, and an NBA finals in which they lost to one of the greatest players who ever lived, Steph Curry. Like, there's no shame in losing that series. So I'm thinking about this for the Celtics, where if you look at the last 3 years, their quote-unquote really big playoff wins, almost all of them come on the road. You go back to 2022. Remember, they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who were the defending champions at the time. No Chris Middleton, but Giannis has he is the Greek freak, a freakishly great series. Remember, the series goes back to Game 6 in Milwaukee. Bucks have a 3-2 lead. And Jason Tatum, I believe he dropped 46, if I'm not mistaken, goes crazy on the road in Milwaukee, forces a Game 7. Celtics ride that momentum, shoot 1,000,000 threes, make 1,000,000 threes, and blow the Milwaukee Bucks out in Game 7. But they would not have gotten there if Tatum doesn't go crazy on the road. Think about the 22 Eastern Conference Finals against the Miami Heat, where it's a back and forth, push and pull, tug-of-war series. It's tied 2-2. Boston goes to Miami, wipes the floor with the Heat. And we're thinking, okay, it's over. And Boston's going home. The Warriors at that point had already clinched their spot in the finals. The Celtics are going to want to go ahead and wrap this thing up, get some time to rest, get ready for Golden State. And then at home, Jimmy Butler goes nuclear, which he's prone to do in the postseason, and the Celtics lose a weird Game 6 at home. Like, what? And then they go to Miami, and albeit by the skin of their teeth, they win Game 7. Think about the 2023 postseason. Now, there were no big signature wins for the Celtics against the Hawks because they're way better than the Hawks, but there was a signature loss. Remember, they're up 3-1. The Hawks don't have DeJounte Murray. They're an awful defensive team. And Trae Young hits a game winner in Boston to force a Game 6. Now, the Celtics go on to win Game 6, but it's kind of like, okay, you played a game that you really shouldn't have had to play because Trae Young beat you. Trae Young's a really good player, but not good enough to carry a Hawks team without Jamal Murray, or against a Celtics team that was as loaded as it was last year. Boston's down 3-2 because they lost a home Game 5 to the Sixers in the second round. What happens? Almost a repeat of 2022, where Tatum the difference was Tatum was great for 4 quarters against the Bucks. He was awful through 3 quarters against the Sixers. I think scored 1 point. Then goes nuts in the fourth quarter. They win a road Game 6, go to Game 7, ride the momentum of Game 6. Embiid and Harden are demoralized. You win that one. Even the Eastern Conference Finals last year, they're facing the Miami Heat. Again, this goes back to my theory of they have a belief, okay, the Heat are an 8 seed. This is a bit of a Cinderella story. We've generally been considered the best team in the East all season long. We'll take care of business quickly with the Miami Heat. And, we're down 3-0. But what did the Celtics do? They win a road Game 4, come home, win Game 5, win a road Game 6 at the buzzer on a Derek White, crazy putback at the buzzer by a millisecond. And I was not one of these people. Go back and look. I thought the Heat would win Game 7 still, but the national media narrative was like, okay, Red Sox, go Sox. Came back from 3-0 against the Yankees in 2004. The Patriots were down 28-3 to the Falcons. It's only right that the Boston Celtics do something unprecedented themselves. Come back from 3-0 to beat the Miami Heat, and they get steamrolled at home in Game 7 by Miami. It's this weird thing. Again, we talk about great home courts or loud crowds, and I'm by no means blaming the Boston crowd for this odd 500 streak of basketball that Boston has played at home. but it is a thing. I mean, we have 28 games of evidence. It's 14 wins, 14 losses. They're an average basketball team on their home floor in the postseason the last 3 years. Now, was I shocked that they got destroyed by Cleveland? Yeah, I think that was a team as offensively limited as the Cavaliers outside of Donovan Mitchell. That was surprising. Tatum had a bad night. Jaylen Brown was good. Like, nobody for Boston, nobody wearing green really played well last night. Just about everybody wearing Cleveland Cavaliers black was great. Donovan Mitchell continues his really impressive streak of scoring outputs. But what we've seen the last 3 years, this is who they are. 14-14 on the road. I'm sorry, 14-14 at home. 16-7 away from home on the road. It is one of the weirdest streaks I've ever seen covering the NBA on Carving Up Live. It's you talk about a home court disadvantage. That's kind of what the Boston Celtics are. Look, as for the Cavs, some of you may want me to get this big detailed breakdown of Cleveland and their win last night. Listen, they did what they've been doing all season long. That's play great defense. That's Cleveland's MO. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the league all season long. We saw that in the Orlando series. The defense in Game 7 was able to keep them in that game in order for the offense to finally get their act together and come back. But if there's one thing that I know, and I know Clevelanders don't like me, that's okay. But if there's one thing I know about the Cavaliers, it's that they are having their best postseason run without LeBron James in 3 decades. And their best player wants out. According to all the sources. By the way, think about this, folks. In 2 of the last 3 Cavalier postseason runs, 2018 and 2024, they're great. 18, they got to the finals. 24, hey, they're pushing the Celtics, the 1-seed Celtics, 60-win Celtics. Their best player still wants out. Even when Cleveland is successful, get me the blank out of here. LeBron in 18, for different reasons, of course. Donovan Mitchell now, like, bro, yeah, I'm having the best playoff runs in years for me. I don't want any part of this. That sums up Cleveland sports in a nutshell, if I do say so myself. I'm just, it may come across as a little mean, but is it true? Just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. It's at least worth consideration. So there you go. But again, I put on Instagram last night, my stories, like this Boston Celtics home court, it's more of an idea than it is a reality if you go back 2 years ago and include this postseason, 3 postseasons. Now, I think Boston's going to beat Cleveland in 5. I think, listen, we saw 16-7 for the Celtics on the road. I think they'll do exactly what they did in the Miami series. Now, Cleveland has more offensively skilled players than Miami did without Jimmy Butler. But I think Boston goes to Cleveland. Again, similar situation as other series where it's like, hey, we better win. We got to go to Cleveland and at least get 1. I think they get Game 3. They're like, hey, let's take care of Game 4. Let's wrap this thing up in 5 before we worry about the Knicks or the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. I said about Boston coming into the playoffs, I think they'll have only 2 losses coming into the conference finals. They'll lose once to Miami, lose once to Orlando or Cleveland. They've got their 1 loss to Miami. They've got their 1 loss to Cleveland. I think the next Boston Celtics loss will come in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's what I've got. All right, shifting now, a team that plays tonight, virtually with basically with their season on the line, is the Denver Nuggets. They play the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. What's the spread on that game? Minnesota minus 3.5. That feels about right. It was as high as 4.5 at one point. I would not take 3.5. I would still go Denver in the points. Listen, this is a situation where the defending champions have their backs against the wall. They've gotten not just blown out, but embarrassed, shamed by media, by fans, social media. Everybody's crushing the Nuggets. They hear that for 72 straight hours. Eventually, as a professional athlete, as a prideful professional athlete, you get tired of that stuff. You come out, you use that controlled rage in order to channel into a victory in a massive Game 3. I think that's what the Denver Nuggets will do tonight. I picked Denver in 6. I'm going to go down with the ship. I believe in pick integrity. You don't abandon your pick just because things aren't going right. So that's where I'm rolling with. So I think the Nuggets will win a close game tonight in Minneapolis. But the best player on the Nuggets is undoubtedly Nikola Jokic, and he did something that only 8 other individuals in the history of the NBA can say they did, and that is win 3 NBA most valuable players. We could show you the list right now. Guys who have won 3 MVPs. By the way, all stats provided by our friends at StatMuse. All Graphics provided by my buddy Alfred Parsar Jr. Shout out to Alfred. 3 MVPs in NBA history. Moses Malone, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and now Nikola Jokic. 2 guys have won 4 MVPs. Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James. 2 guys have won 5 MVPs. Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, and only 1 guy has got 6 MVPs, and that is the Cap himself, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So only 8 other guys in the history of the NBA have gotten 3 MVPs. Now, I am by no means saying, oh, Jokic doesn't deserve this one. I was at the front of the Jokic shouldn't have been a back-to-back MVP in 21 and 22 train. I was at the front of that, and then he proved me dead wrong. I still don't think he should have gotten it in 21, nonetheless. And frankly, 22, that's another story for another day. But in 2023, did he ever shut me up by putting together one of the more impressive individual and team runs, frankly, that the Denver Nuggets were able to pull off last season en route to winning the championship? But with great power or with great accomplishments comes great responsibility and expectations. And you talk about a guy in Jokic who's a multi-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA guy. All-NBA teams will be announced soon. He'll no doubt be first team, of course. But a 3-time MVP now and a finals MVP last year. So the championship a year ago takes a little bit of the pressure off of Jokic. It's why I've been very hard on Joel Embiid. I'm like, dude, can you get me to a conference finals? Is that for a 2-time scoring champion, a league MVP? Is that asking too much? Is that asking too much? Jokic have gotten to a 2020 conference finals and got to the NBA finals and won it convincingly a year ago. But if we could put that graphic up one more time, if you look at some of these guys, okay, Moses Malone to me is the most underrated player ever for a number of reasons. Larry Bird, icon. Magic, icon. Wilt, LeBron, Bill Russell, Jordan, Kareem, icons of the sport, and all of which, particularly guys in the modern NBA era, Bird, Magic, LeBron, Michael Jordan, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when they played poorly in postseason series, we were hard on them. Didn't we call Magic Johnson Tragic Johnson after the 1984 finals when he was abysmal in that series? What Magic do? Came back, won a title in 85. I believe it was 85. Larry Bird, first NBA Finals, didn't win Finals MVP, had back-to-back 8-point games. Larry Bird, Larry Legend, had back-to-back 8-point games. Cornbread Maxwell won Finals MVP, and I think that was 1981. Michael Jordan, he's the GOAT. People forget. For Michael Jordan, I'm not even going to do the 1-9 before Scottie Pippen. I'm going to do before Jordan got his first title in 91, he was holy smokes, this guy's awesome. He's the best player in the world. But is he a winning player? Is he ever going to get past the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons? Is he ever going to get a championship? That was the narrative around Jordan. And then he does what he does, reels off 6 and 8 years. LeBron, to this day, still gets, to me, outlandish criticism in the sense that, oh my God, year 21, we expect more out of you than LeBron. I mean, how dare you get gentlemen swept by the defending champs, even though your coach doesn't know what he's doing and your team is simply not as good as the Denver Nuggets. We are harder, I would strongly argue, on a 39-year-old LeBron than a 29-year-old, I believe that's how old he is, Jokic. Jokic is only 1 MVP short of LeBron. Now, in fairness, LeBron was dubbed the chosen one. LeBron, from the moment he was a teenager, had lofty expectations. Jokic was a second-round pick, so I understand that. But history does matter in anything, and certainly sports when we have these discussions. What happened the year you won MVP, I think, does matter in conversations. For example, last MVP to win a championship the same year, Steph Curry in 2015. It's the last time an MVP won a championship. By the way, today, I believe, is the 8-year, I can't believe it's been this long, 8-year anniversary. Steph got his second straight MVP, first and only unanimous MVP in the history of the NBA. When we think Steph Curry 2016, what do we think? We think 2 things. My God, might be the greatest offensive season ever. The second thing we think of, or maybe for some, the first thing, yeah, he also choked a 3-1 lead in the finals, and nobody in the history of the game's done that. We, to a degree, almost hold the MVP against Steph. And for the record, as the biggest Steph Curry fan in the world, as the biggest Warriors fan in the world, I get it. That's how it works. You think about a guy in Giannis who got an MVP in 2019, but didn't play very well in the Eastern Conference Finals and got crushed for it. He played poorly in the second round in 2020 when he won an MVP and was crushed for it. Embiid. Now, I was the only one who did it, apparently, but Embiid I thought at the time, criticized fairly for coming up small against the Boston Celtics last year in the Eastern Conference semifinals after winning his MVP. If Jokic goes out in round 2, and again, I'm going to stick with my Nuggets pick because I believe in pick integrity, and I believe in the heart of a champion. I think the Denver Nuggets, they're not getting swept. The Nuggets are not getting swept. That's not happening. But if they go out in 5, dare I say 6, you look at Nikola Jokic's 3 MVP seasons, didn't end so well. First MVP 2021, you know what happened? They won a playoff series against Portland, got to the second round against the Suns, and they got swept. And the second MVP season, 2022, back-to-back, they get to the playoffs and get smoked in 5 games by the Golden State Warriors. If this year he wins a third MVP and they get, thus far they've gotten smoked, and they get embarrassed by Minnesota, not only will that be 3 MVPs for Jokic that he failed to get to a conference finals in that same season of, I threw out the stat on Wednesday's show, and I have it today. This will, to me, since 2003, be one of the 5 worst title defenses in NBA history. In the last 21 years, we could show you. In my opinion, these are the 5 worst title defenses since 2003. So the 07 Heat, I don't know if they'll ever be surpassed in the modern era, in the last 20 years or so. 07 Heat, 06, they won a championship. 07, they got swept out of round 1. 2012 Mavericks, same thing. Won a title in 2011, swept out of the first round in 2012. 2021 Lakers, they lost in round 1 in 6 games after winning the title the year prior, but there is a slight asterisk where, okay, they got the shortest offseason because of the COVID year, and LeBron wasn't healthy. AD didn't play at portions of that series. Like, they were beat up. Like, you at least give them somewhat of a pass. 2015 Spurs lost in 7 in round 1 after winning the title the previous year, but if you remember that series, that was a back and forth, push and pull, tug of war series with the prime Lob City Clippers, and Chris Paul hits a game-winning shot in Game 7. And then finally, the 2011 Lakers, they got to the second round, but got swept after winning the previous 2 NBA titles. If Denver goes out in 5 games, I'm sorry, I think they join that group because, in part, they're healthy. Well, Jamal Murray has a bad knee. Yeah, I'm sure Kobe Bryant had a bad knee and a bad wrist in 2011. It still was a bad title defense. It was. Since 2003, those are the 5 worst. If the Nuggets go out in 4 games, which I don't think they will, if they go out in 5, which is a possibility, and if they go out in 6, but it's a different type of going out in 6. Remember when the Nuggets a year ago beat the Suns in 6 games and people were like, hey, the Suns pushed. The Nuggets humiliated the Suns in the last 2 games of that series. Like, that was the most lopsided 6 games I've ever seen in my life. If it's something like that this year, part of Nikola Jokic's, or the narrative surrounding Nikola Jokic has to be, well, he won MVP, but team kind of came up small in the playoffs. Well, they were beat up in 2021 and 2022. They weren't this year. Jokic is there, Jamal Murray, Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., all the guys are there. I'm not, for the record, I think Jokic is, even if they lose this series, even if Anthony Edwards goes on to win the NBA championship, I think this guy's still the best player in the world. The overall package he brings to the table as it pertains to his game, getting other guys involved, efficiency, rebounding, he makes other guys better around him. The entire offense is focused around him. Got a few MVPs now. I think he has to be the best player in the world right now, even if the Nuggets don't win the championship. But should he be criticized like LeBron and Jordan and Steph? Guys who won MVPs in certain years but didn't win the championship, which, for the record, that hasn't been done, an MVP and a championship, in almost a decade, since 2015 with Steph. Shouldn't he get a little criticism? Just a little. That's the thing I pushed back on when he won the 2 MVPs. Well, what do you expect him to do? I thought he was the MVP. I'm not asking to win the championship, but can he not lose 8 of your last 9 playoff games, which he did between 21 and 22? Let's at least be consistent on this. And that is what I'm putting out there. That's all I'm asking for, is consistency from the NBA media. I think Jokic should have won. I disagree with Shaq on the Shai Gilgeous thing, although I see the case for Shai. I disagree with those who voted Luka Doncic. I see the case. I thought Jokic should have won MVP this year for a number of reasons. Denver was better in the regular season this year than they were a year ago. Jokic put up just as good, if not better, than the performance he did a year ago. And in some of his MVP seasons, for the record, the efficiency was crazy. Was the 2 seed in the loaded Western Conference. Now you can make a case, well, what about Shea? I've seen Jokic do it in the postseason more. Again, postseason does factor into my MVP decisions way more than it does with others. I get how that differs from others, but that's how I feel on Nikola Jokic. Let's look at the comments here. Patrick, if Denver loses tonight, Jokic just won MVP. There needs to be the same energy for Joker as if it were for Bron, KD, Steph, and Giannis. When MJ won MVP, scoring title, defensive player of the year, slam dunk champ, what happened? Oh, yeah. Biased MJ fans will say accolades over postseason success. That's kind of what some folks do for Embiid today. Detroit shut down MJ. Better, yet hard-nosed football, and nobody else showed up. Scotty was a non-factor. And as an unbiased MJ fan, I remember the postseason pre-Scotty. And the postseason's pre-Scotty, 1-9. But again, there's 3 facts. There's 3 things that Jordan fans kind of don't let you say. I mean, you could say whatever you want, but don't want you to say. He lost he went 1-9 in his first 10 playoff games of his career. He came back. People are like, oh, Jordan won 3 titles, came back, won another 3 titles. No, he did not. He won the 3 titles, retired, came back, and was bad against Orlando in the 95 playoffs. Well, he was out of shape. Are we going to hold him the same standard as others? He is the GOAT after all, right? Right. And then, of course, the Wizards years. Well, he was out of shape. Why'd he quit twice? Ron hadn't had to do that. I don't know why I brought that. I don't even know. Listen, I'm not trying to get into any beefs with anybody. I don't want this to be a Kendrick Drake or now a Shaq Shannon Sharp situation. I don't want any smoke today. I mean, I want the. I'm not looking for the smoke. Let's put it that way. Because I'm never going to hold back on my unedited opinion on the show. It'd be cheating the audience. Okay, so shifting to last night, the Dallas Mavericks beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. I believe the score was 119-110. Yes, it was. If I can pull this up here. They won the game. Yeah, 119-110. Dallas won this basketball game. And Luka was really, really good. He was excellent in the first quarter, kind of slowed down the next 2, and then closed the game out in the fourth. Luka Doncic gets the Oklahoma City Thunder, dropped a cool 29, 10, and 7 on 11 for 21 shooting from the field and 5 for 8 from three-point range. And for the record, played some pretty good defense once again. So I don't know if I've ever had a take age this well, this quickly, as the one I'm about to show you, a clip from Wednesday's show. But I literally said, when they lost game 1, I picked Dallas to win the series in 7, by the way, against Oklahoma City. I thought it'd be a tough, drag-out series. But I said, okay, Luka's awesome. Luka's one of the 5 best players in basketball. But part of the reason the Dallas Mavericks went on a great run at the end of the season, and to me, I said before the playoffs, I thought they were the 3rd best team in the NBA after the Nuggets and after the Celtics. I mean, there's still a case. You see, obviously, factor Minnesota in there. But I said, hey, Dallas, instead of just going Luka-centric, just Luka, they moved the basketball. They play more of a team-oriented style. And this is what I said on Wednesday's show, and see if this applied to last night. What I want to see more of, though, is up-tempo. Playing free, playing with speed, getting out in transition. But if you watch Dallas's offense to start the Clippers series, which they won, of course, and to start this series, it's kind of been, to use the great Charles Barkley's term, dribble, 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 what he used to say about James Harden. That's kind of what we're seeing from Luka. That's kind of what we're seeing from Dallas, and it puts the offense in a complete standstill. Just playing up tempo, stop going just Luka, Luka, Luka. Move the basketball. Luka's going to get his. Kyrie's going to get his. But I think that's the thing I want to see from the Dallas Mavericks moving forward in this series. And that's exactly what they did. Again, to back it up, Luka Doncic's usage rate was under 30%. I think it was around 26, 7, 8, somewhere in that ballpark. Here's a fun stat. Dallas this year, when Luka Doncic's usage rate is 30% or below, they're 8-0. 8-0. 8 wins, 0 losses. LeVar Ball. That is what the Dallas Mavericks are. When Luka Doncic's usage rate is 30% or below, they're undefeated.
I'm undefeated. Never lost.
Not this season, they have it. And here's a fun stat. And I kind of looked at the numbers like, okay, how does it translate to team success and to Luka's individual success? And we'll show you this graphic right here. Luka, when his usage rate is 30% or below, numbers are still really good. 26 a game, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, 45% from the field, 38% from three on high volume shooting, by the way. But look below Luka right there on that stat. 120 team points per game. Folks, that would rank 4th in the NBA. 108.5 points allowed per game. When Luka Doncic's usage rate is 30% or below. That, my friends, would rank 5th in the NBA. And of course, you see right there, 8-0. It's a pretty simple concept. If you look at Michael Jordan, for example, and people like to mislead you, believe, oh, Jordan just came in the NBA and started winning championships. No, Jordan was putting up crazy numbers. Crazy. 1988 might have been his best season. But part of the reason he wasn't winning championships is because the Bulls, some of it was Michael's fault, and some of it was coaching. They weren't playing a team-oriented, move the basketball, unselfish brand of basketball. When Phil Jackson came in, when Tex Winter came in, instituted the triangle, people forget Jordan's stats, while still amazing. Like I'm not going to shortchange and act like, oh, Michael was just a role player. Michael Jordan was still easily the best player in the NBA at that point. But the numbers came down slightly, but the team success off the charts. Obviously, the 6 titles in 8 years from 91 to 98. That's what you saw from MJ. By the way, for Kobe. Now, some of it for Kobe was just a necessity because those Lakers teams in the mid-2000s were flatly not good. But when Shaq leaves, the Lakers kind of blow that dynasty up. It's basically Kobe Bryant and a bunch of guys after that and a bunch of no-name coaches. And Kobe's putting up, he had multiple 60-point games. He obviously had the 81-point game against Toronto in 2006, putting up some awesome stat lines. And they kept getting bounced in round 1. They get Gasol. They bring Phil Jackson back. Again, triangle offense. And Kobe says, okay, I'm going to sit back. Not sit back. Kobe's still the best player on the team, by the way. But I'm going to defer more to my teammates. I'm going to trust my teammates more. And they got to 3 straight finals and won the last 2. I'm not saying the Mavericks are going to win the championship this year. I think they can. I think they're good enough to. From what I've seen in the second half of the season, I've loved Dallas. And I didn't buy into them coming into this season. I wasn't sure about the Kyrie fit. We saw at the end of last year. They cratered, ended up missing the play-in tournament at the end of last season. But the fit's been great. Kyrie has been a good citizen for the Mavericks. Luka's been Luka. But again, usage rate 30% or below. We saw it in the last series against the Clippers, and I talked about that on Wednesday, where they're living and dying by number 77. And he's putting up really good statistics, but there's no ball movement. And for the record, and I've said this for years on this show, what people forget is, and sometimes what these players, Luka, James Harden, Carmelo Anthony, Kobe, Jordan, like players that have gotten into these bad habits, these one-on-one bad habits where they're great enough to where they can get their own shots. But it's way, way easier for the defense to game plan around that. Because if it's just one, if it's 1-on-5, okay, I don't have to worry about Kyrie Irving or PJ Washington over here. Just let Luka do his thing, dribble, as Chuck would say. Shoot a 3 if he makes, or shoot a 3 or get to his own spot in the mid-range. If he makes it, well, did the best we could. If he misses it, well, that's exactly what we wanted him to do. What the Thunder don't want to happen, and the Thunder have good rangy perimeter defenders. Again, I think the series is going 7. I'm actually more excited for this series than any of the other ones because of the firepower offensively, the talent defensively, the really good coaches. They can take Dallas out of what they're comfortable with. They're good enough to do that. But when Dallas goes back more to what they did in the second half of the season when they did get hot, ended up winning 50 games, you see what you see last night. Luka is great. Again, put up the numbers one more time. Like Luka averaged, I think it was 34, 9, and 8, something like that in the regular season, which is incredible numbers. I mean, the points per game dips a lot, but it dips a lot to 26. Like, it's not like it's plummeting to 18. Like, 26, 9, and 9 on 47 from the field, 38 from 3. I think just about every player in the NBA, even prime Russell Westbrook, when he's putting up, certainly the shooting percentages, prime Russ would put that up. My Lord, he was inefficient. But anybody would take those numbers. And again, 120 team points per game. That would rank 4th in the NBA. 118 points per game allowed. This this season when Luka's usage rate is 30% or below. That would rank 5th in the NBA and an 8-0 record for the Dallas Mavericks. And by the way, something too for Dallas is if Denver gets bounced. Now, again, the way Minnesota's playing, I'm not sure anybody's excited to play Minnesota. Like, excited from a competitor standpoint, sure. But, some dogs in Minnesota, they're coming after you. So that to me would be a fun match because Luka, the one bad, by his standards at least, not by NBA player standards, but the one bad series Luka did have was 2022 Western Conference Finals against my Warriors. Why? You could throw Wiggins at him. You could throw Draymond at him. You could throw Clay was still serviceable in the defensive end. You could throw Clay at him. You could throw a lot of other guys at Luka Doncic. Sometimes they even throw Steph on him from time to time. Oklahoma City, I don't think has that. They have good ranging wings. Lou Dort, chief among them, but not the way Minnesota does. So that to me would be an interesting matchup that could potentially favor Minnesota. But if you're Dallas and you would have told the Mavericks coming in the playoffs, hey, you're going to take care of the Clippers because obviously you're going to take care of the Clippers. You got OKC. You're going to be in a hard back-and-forth series that you're going to need Luka to be the best player on the floor for, which he's fully capable of being with respect to Shea and Kyrie. If you survive that, guess what? You don't have to face Denver. If you just told the Mavericks that coming in, they said, great, hey, Minnesota's amazing, but we could be 4 wins away from an NBA Finals. And by the way, in our second conference finals in the last 3 years. So, again, watching that game last night, I'm like, Jason Kidd is a smart coach. He knew what he was doing. He saw what happened in game 1, and as any great coach makes, contrary to what LeBron haters think Darvin Ham's a great coach, or they just don't like LeBron, but great coaches adjust. Now, one guy who doesn't adjust is Mike Budenholzer, was hired by the Suns today. We actually just got his contract information a second ago. Talk about that at the end of the show. But love what Dallas did. I think it's going to be a really fun tug-of-war back-and-forth series that ends up going 7, just like the Mavericks-Suns series did in 2022. Now, again, the Suns were a big favorite over the Mavs. They won 65 games, like 64, 65 games that year. And the home team won out until the Mavs, embarrassed the Suns in Game 7. I don't think we're going to see that. Because, again, as I talked about the Thunder, there is a naivete of going on your first. Shea's been to the playoffs before, but as a role player, going to your first playoff run, youngest team in the NBA, could be the youngest championship team in NBA history if they were to go on a run and pull it off, where you don't know any better. Like, this is the Thunder's first loss. The playoffs is going to be interesting to see how they come out and respond in Game 3. My guess is the Mavs win Game 3. OKC wins Game 4. OKC wins Game 5. Mavs win the last 2 to win the series. That's about how I think it'll play out. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's, again, back and forth down the wire. So it'll be fun to see. But I think for Oklahoma City, that's going to be a fun kind of storyline. Game 3 is tomorrow or Sunday. I think it's Sunday. In Dallas. Yeah, it's on Saturday night in Dallas. The Mavs are 2.5-point favorites. By the way, Boston is a 7.5-point favorite in Cleveland. So Cavs fans, before you get all excited, chill. You're still a 7.5-point favorite, 7.5-point underdog at home. Okay, there you go. Patrick, Wizards years, average win total 25 wins with Jordan, by the way. No postseason appearances. Yep, I remember. Patrick, Doug Collins said in a press conference, give the ball to Michael Jordan, get out of the way. Fill ball movement and feature other guys to MJ's strengths, a la the 91 finals when John Paxson was hitting crucial shots. It's the tales all the time. That's what works. Like, it's the very reason that, and I want to be clear, I think Mark Jackson has been done as dirty as any individual in professional sports. Like, obviously, I was heavily against the Warriors firing him back in 2014. It's actually my first year as a Warriors fan. And they hire Steve Kerr. I'm like, okay, we'll see. And then Steve Kerr goes on to be amazing and better than Mark Jackson. Now, again, Mark Jackson should have had a job in the last 10 years, which is it's insane to me. He's barely even gotten interviews. But the reason Steve Kerr has been better, well, Mark Jackson would have won with those teams probably just because he had Steph. But it is a little like Doug Collins was a really good coach, I believe. But Steve Kerr came in, and by the way, people forget this. Steph made his first All-Star game in 2014. He should have made it in 2013, but that's a different story. 2015, Steph Curry won MVP of the league. His points per game came down. What does that tell you? It wasn't that like Steph was a selfish player, but Steve Kerr came in, and due to the injury to David Lee, inserts Draymond in the starting lineup. Clay, the 5-out small ball, putting Iguodala in as the sixth man, obviously with Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Harrison Barnes. Took the league by surprise. Now, Mark Jackson had flirted with that before. He had tried small ball, sometimes by necessity because the Warriors in the 14 playoffs were missing a lot of their big men, which is why DeAndre Jordan went crazy against the Warriors in that series. But again, more of a team-oriented. The Nuggets play this, by the way. The Timberwolves lately have done this. It works. It's a tale as old as time. It works. The triangle system with the Bulls and Lakers dynasties, the same thing with the Warriors dynasty. And again, who knows if the next dynasty is Minnesota or Denver? We'll see. But it works. It always has. Different forms of facets. What doesn't work, what doesn't win titles. And Kobe Bryant talked about this even in retirement. Like, put up some really good numbers in the mid-2000s, the 81-point game and all that, but I did not win anything. Once the Lakers put some reliable teammates around me, convinced me, and I don't want to say convinced me, but got me to sort of buy back into a system, the triangle offense, that allowed me to still get my own, but trust others. Got 2 more championships at the end of my career. That's how Kobe was talked about it. I think he was 100% right. I think it works historically. Okay, so only NFL topic of the day. Again, more on Mike Budenholzer hired by the Suns in a few minutes, about 10 minutes or so. I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying this. So, I respect people who don't go with the typical run-of-the-mill cookie-cutter sports opinions. Heck, life opinions. Now, I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. Those people are weirdos and have no lives. But people who think outside the box and try to bring a different perspective than what is traditionally accepted. I respect, because I try to do that on this show. Not for clicks, but because I genuinely, honest to God, believe it. And I think I can back it up with data and facts. So Cody Benjamin, the individual who wrote this piece for CBS Sports a few days ago, he ranked the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. And again, he went out on a limb with some of these. He did. One that I'm about to talk about in just a second. And I respect him, and I don't want him to stop doing this, or anybody, any young sports writer or commentator, podcaster. The way you make it, the way you really set yourself apart, think outside the box. Think about, hey, okay, maybe this isn't the way we traditionally think about something. Maybe that's not the way it works, so to speak, if that makes any sense. That said, this might be the single worst quarterback rankings list I've ever seen in my life. So I'm going to go and put up the top. I have a graphic for the top 10 quarterbacks he put up. And I could even mention the ones below the top 10. But here's Cody Benjamin's top 10. They're awful. Mahomes is number 1, duh. Brock Purdy is number 2. Josh Allen 3, Burrow 4, Stroud 5, Lamar Jackson 6, ladies and gentlemen. Jalen Hurts 7, Dak 8, Herbert 9, Jordan Love 10. Now, part of the reason it's such a bad rankings list, folks, you look below the top 10, okay? I don't get this. Aaron Rodgers, who is yet to have a 300-yard passing game since week 14, I believe, of 2021, Tua Tagovailoa, who does not have a playoff win on his resume, are both ranked higher than Jared Goff, who, just got to the NFC Championship game. That seems to matter a little. Okay, you keep looking down the list. This to me is insanity. Matt Stafford is 16th. You're telling me that Matthew Stafford is, by definition, an average quarterback? Are you out of your mind? Again, respect to the writer. I don't want to, it's not a personal shot or anything. I just think his list is awful. Matt Stafford, statistically, at the end of last season, the second half of last season, was one of the best quarterbacks in football. The Rams were one of the best teams in football over the second half of this year. I think the Rams have just as good as of a shot as anybody in the NFC to get to another Super Bowl. I really believe that. I think the roster's great. The loss of Aaron Donald hurts. I get that. That is, to me, lunacy. And you look down the list. By the way, if I have this here. Okay. I was always a Derek Carr guy, and I'm always going to like Derek Carr. There was a point in time I made a case he was a fringe top 10 guy. That's obviously not a thing anymore. He has J.J. McCarthy above Derek Carr. What? In my mind, the worst quarterback in the first round of this draft. He's better than Carr. Like, Carr's not elite, but Carr's not bad. He's a starter. So I thought this list was, in no other uncertain terms, atrocious. I thought it was bad. But the one I want to focus on, though, Brock Purdy at number 2. Put up the list one more time, okay? Brock Purdy, number 2. So he is saying, this list says, that if Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs didn't exist, then the best quarterback would not be Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar, anybody. It would be Brock Purdy. And you say, well, Bryson, come on now. I mean, he led the NFL in passer rating. He was top 5 in top 3 in basically every counting stat that matters as it pertains to the quarterback position. You talk about pass rating. You talk about touchdown interception ratio. You talk about all the big counting stats. To that, I would respond with, okay, just think for a moment about this. When you think about ranking quarterbacks, ranking anything, to me, the ultimate sign of value, in any field of, in any line of work, and even when we're going to rank quarterbacks here, what is the business you're working for, the corporation, what are they without you? That tells you how valuable you are. And you'd be surprised, maybe not that surprised, but a lot of these franchises, some of them were pretty good. Some of them were god-awful before they got their guys. But we can show the list, okay? So the other quarterbacks in the top 10 that Cody Benjamin believes are top 10 guys. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Stroud, Lamar, Hurts, Dak, Herbert, Love. Those are his other top 10 guys. He's got Purdy at number 2. Think about, we'll go team by team, and I'll sum this up as quickly as I can. Let's go team by team. Let's look at the first 3 years, or the last 3 years, prior to said star quarterback becoming their guy. Go and put this up. First 3 teams. So the Kansas City Chiefs were actually really good. 33-15, 3 playoff appearances, 3 division titles, but they never got to a conference title game. Now, they were very successful in the regular season because Andy Reid's a great coach, all-time great coach for that matter. Travis Kelce, Tyreek, all of that. But when they got Mahomes, obviously they go to dynasty lengths. Buffalo Bills before Josh Allen. They were a 500 team, had 1 playoff appearance in the 3 years before he got there. Joe Burrow, the Bengals were probably one of the worst teams in football the 3 years before Joe got there. 15-33, 0 playoff appearances, 0 anything as it pertains to playoffs. Let's look at the next 3. Texans 3 years before they got Stroud. 11-38-1. 27 games under 500 prior to getting Stroud. Obviously, nothing in the playoffs. The well-run Baltimore Ravens, who, even as a Steelers fan, I respect the heck out of how they do business. Before they got Lamar, the great Ravens, they didn't make the playoffs in any of the 3 years before they got Lamar, and were 4 games under 500. The Ravens, before they got Lamar Jackson, speaks to his value. The Eagles before Jalen Hurts. Okay, from 18 to 20. I don't count 20 because Hurts started like 3 games, okay? So I don't even count that. 3 games under 500. They did get to the playoffs twice, won a division in 2019, no conference title game appearances. And then finally, the last 3 guys he had in the list, Cowboys 3 years before they got Dak. Oh, the Cowboys roster for Dak was 24-24 and won 1 playoff game in those 3 years. The Chargers 3 years before getting Herbert. 26-22 is not bad. They did get to the playoffs, but Herbert has been a significantly better player at this stage than obviously Philip Rivers has. And again, Herbert's lack of playoff success is a different conversation for a different day, but they certainly got their guy. And then the Packers, you see 34-16, 2 playoff appearances, 2 division titles, and they got to a conference title game. You're like, hey, they were fine before Jordan Love. Yes, because in the 2 of those 3 years, they had prime Aaron Rodgers. Like, you're going to be good, obviously. So, and Jordan Love's taken that mantle. We'll see if he continues in 2024. How about the 49ers? 3 years before they got Brock Purdy. What did the 49ers do? Let's see. They were awesome. 29-20 record, 2 playoff appearances, 1 division title, 2 conference title game appearances, and a Super Bowl appearance. We can't punish Brock Purdy for doing what he did with a ready-made roster. Who said anything about punishing him? Who said anything about knocking Brock Purdy? My issue with the dialogue around Brock Purdy is, and this is a prime example of it. CBS Sports, reputable source, no question about that. Cody Benjamin, I'm sure, does a fantastic job. but we almost take nuance out of it. Like, what do I always say on this show? Two things can be true. They can. Believe it or not, our brains are complex enough to simultaneously hold two opinions. It really does. On one hand, you put Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Well, obviously, he's better than the 256 pick or whatever. He's way better than that. Way better than that. And to his credit, was great on the game-winning drive against Green Bay, was great in the second half comeback against Detroit in the NFC title game, and was good. He wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He was good in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. But are you sitting up there and telling me that Burrow and Allen and Lamar aren't winning with that roster? Like, are we going to really? Well, okay. Kirk Cousins has had good stats. Doesn't make him a top 2 quarterback in the NFL. Like, this idea that we can simultaneously say Purdy's been good for the Niners. The Niners are better with Purdy. But the Niners got to a Super Bowl and an additional NFC Championship game with Jimmy Garoppolo. And we've seen what he's done since. Now, I think Purdy's better than Jimmy G. I've said that from the jump since Purdy became the starter in 2022. I've always maintained that. But it has been I don't get the dialogue around it. Because at some point, the tangibles, the freaking eye test has to matter to a degree, right? Right? Lamar's insane athleticism, Burrow's insane accuracy, Allen's insane arm strength. That they've been able to take over. Lamar didn't take over a garbage organization, but kind of a struggling organization in the Ravens into, 2 MVP. Again, too. How do you have a 2-time league MVP at number 6? That to me is nuts. I like Purdy. I do. I think he's a top 15-ish quarterback. But this idea that, none of these other guys could have done what Purdy did. Really? Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Christian freaking McCaffrey, the best left tackle in the league, a great defense, an awesome coach. You're telling me they couldn't have done that in the weak NFC? I don't know. It's we take nuance out of the conversations with Purdy. I don't get it. I really don't get it at all. Let's see. Patrick, Purdy at number 2. Oh my gosh. What wacky pack is this guy smoking? As Barry would say, idiot brain. John Rivera, JJ, I agree with you. McCarthy, overrated. Brock is in the top 10, not the top 2. Shaking my head. It's crazy. And he says too early for CJ. I agree with you. And by the way, that, not to open up another segment, but I'm glad. Let me put John's comment back up there. Thank you, John, because again, I want to, 2 things can be true. CJ was my guy coming out of the 2023 draft. Now, I still think Bryce Young was put in a horrendous situation. I think if Stroud had been there, it'd have been the very similar output. Even though I think Stroud's a better overall prospect than Bryce Young. That said, I think the idea that after 1 year, we can crown CJ Stroud as the next coming, or the second coming, essentially, and the threat to Mahomes, when Trevor Lawrence in year 2, moving off of, you think Urban Meyer's a good coach? Yeah, it's a lot of quarterbacks are going to be bad in their rookie year with Urban Meyer and the Jaguars organization. Trevor Lawrence's year 2, when he actually had an NFL coach, a real one, his numbers were better than CJ Stroud, and he got just as deep in the playoffs. And by the way, had a 27-0 comeback on his resume. Like, that's what I've seen, and I saw Trevor do it last year. Let's see, the Jags were the 1 seed, then Trevor got hurt and they missed the playoffs. I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, if I've seen, it's the thing I say with Embiid. Like, I can't judge Embiid on anything else other than him being injured in the playoffs. I've never seen him healthy in the playoffs, so I have to judge him just as he's hurt. I saw Trevor Lawrence prior to the injury last year. Jags were the 1 seed. The Jags, not the Chiefs, not the Bills, not even the Ravens. The Jags were the 1 seed. Gets hurt. Jacks up his knee, has a concussion. All of a sudden, Trevor's not playing as well. Oh, well, shocking. I'm telling you, it is. And by the way, they lost Zay Jones. Zay Jones just signed with the Cardinals today. So I think that was, I would love to, listen, Trevor's going to sign the extension in Jacksonville, which, by the way, get your money. Like, I'm not, but man, I'd like to see him in a better run organization. I mean, there's a reason the Jags did have the number 1 pick 2 straight years. Again, some of this is what is put around you. And for the record, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Jags and Texans split this year, and Trevor went to CJ's house and beat him and outplayed him. So I'm not selling my Trevor Lawrence stock anytime soon. You get a generational talent like that, Even the Jacks can have playoff success. Just saying. Knicks and Pacers tips off in a few minutes. Indiana's a big favorite, which again, I guess Mitchell Robinson now, OG Anunoby. The Anunoby loss is huge for the Knicks. Like that, it's a really good thing the Knicks won game 2 and Brunson was able to hit some shots in the fourth quarter, because losing that one and losing Anunoby and Brunson's injured, that would have been a brutal loss. But I still think the Knicks will win this series. Knicks in 6, second straight series. I say that. And I think the Nuggets win close tonight over the Timberwolves. At some point, pride's got to take over. And by the way, it's not just pride, but it's also Nuggets are really talented. And Michael Malone's a great coach. Michael Malone, I think, is going to do, not as far as the specific adjustments, but I think is going to adjust similar to how Jason Kidd did in game 2 of the Mavs series, because Jason Kidd's great at making adjustments, where for Denver, some of it's just physicality. Some of it, again, they have the wings to do it. They have Aaron Gordon. They have a KCP. They have Michael Porter Jr. Like, they've got good wing defenders on that team. They don't have much of a bench. I get that, but I think that is, and Johnson agrees with me, Nuggets win tonight. I can't see them getting swept. That would be bad. And again, like I said earlier, Jokic won MVP and should have won MVP in my mind. I get the Shea argument and I get the Luke argument. I totally understand it. I even get a Brunson argument. But again, the overall value we've seen the last few years, we saw what he did in the postseason. But if he goes out, if the Nuggets go out in 5, even in a lopsided 6, it's one of the 5 worst title defenses in the last 21 years. It is. And at that point, Jokic, it was a weird conversation. I think he's still the best player in the world at that point, but it's okay. First MVP got swept by the Suns in the second round. Second MVP got gentlemen swept by the Warriors in the first round. And this MVP, you get maybe gentlemen swept by the Timberwolves in the second round. Again, pick integrity. I'm rolling with the Nuggets. I'm sticking with the Nuggets. Probably not in 6 at this point, but you never know what could happen. But these interesting conversations are important to have as it pertains to these sports debates. Okay, final topic. So we got this news in during the show, midway through the show, from Shams Charania of The Athletic, who reported first that Mike Budenholzer had been hired today by the Phoenix Suns after firing Frank Vogel yesterday. And the contract information comes out today, and I think it's significant. 5 years, $50+ million deal. This is according to Shams, to become the new head coach of the Phoenix Suns. Obviously, it talks about here how Budenholzer has won 2 Coach of the Year awards. So, and by the way, Eric Spoelstra's never won 1 Coach of the Year. That is crazy to me. So, the Suns keep going backwards. It is... Matt Ishbia has somehow, and my buddy Barry Grant Jr., All Even Podcasts, has compared Matt Ishbia, the new owner of the Phoenix Suns, to, I think Prokhorov is the guy's name, who bought the Brooklyn Nets, where he comes in, the Nets are pretty good, and then he screws up all the assets, trades all the assets for an old Paul Pierce and an old Kevin Garnett, and Boston uses those picks to get Brown, Tatum. I mean, they hit on all their draft picks, and Boston's where they're at, and Brooklyn's where they're at. Irrelevant. But there's similarities here, where Ishbia comes in, and basically the first big move he makes is getting Kevin Durant, which, if Kevin Durant's on the market, you get Kevin Durant. Like, we're not going to do is revisionist history. Well, KD's not that good. KD's great, or at his greatest, because he's still a great player, averaged 30 this year. He's still a great player if you give him the requisite, well put together roster, and more importantly, the leadership around him. We saw it in Golden State. Steph was the leader. Draymond's the leader. Steve Kerr's the leader. Like, the structure was there. I think KD would be good in Miami for those reasons. I think some of those fits would make sense. Even the Knicks, although I don't know if I love KD. KD at this age and stage of his career with an Achilles injury on his resume, playing Josh Hart minutes, but whatever. But getting Kevin Durant, okay, you sell all your assets to get KD. Fine. I didn't have an issue with it then. Don't have an issue with it now. He's Kevin Durant. Like he told you in 2019. He's Kevin Durant. But the Suns began to dig themselves into the ground last summer. And I said it then from the jump. It was one of the worst trades I've seen. You move Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, who's aging, awful defensively, and not as efficient of an offensive player as he used to be. And in that offseason, you get some nice role players, and you never get a point guard. So you ask Devin Booker, who's the essence of a 2-guard, if there ever was one, hey, can you play point for us? It's not his natural position. It's not what he's comfortable doing. And so at that point now, you don't get the best out of Book. And you don't get the best out of a guy who can, Again, you don't have a point guard who can get KD open shots and book open shots and be able to run the offense. Again, people like, Chris Paul would have been a better fit with Phoenix than Bradley Beal would have been. We saw it last year. They at least got to the second round. Chris Paul just 2 years ago was the second best player on a 65-win team. Could have helped. Then they continue to dig themselves in the ground by firing Monty Williams and trading DeAndre Ayton, because the fact of the matter is the two of them you had to get rid of one or the other. The relationship at that point was kind of irreparable. You move both? Like, Ayton's still really... Ayton, the few Blazers games I watched this year, Ayton was pretty good. Double-double machine. And Monty Williams, well, he's in Detroit and they're the worst team. It's Detroit. They sucked before Monty Williams. They're going to suck after Monty Williams. So you move Monty Williams, you move Ayton, and you replace him with Yusuf Nurkic, who's the softest 7-footer in the league, and Frank Vogel, who I like. Don't think he should have been fired by the Lakers. He's a better coach than Darvin Ham. But Frank Vogel's not as good of a coach as Monty Williams. He's not. Again, I think Vogel's a good coach, but for what they were trying to do, it did not work. And now you replace Vogel with Budenholzer, who is and nothing against Coach Bud. Seems like a pretty nice guy, personally. There is not a coach that has gotten the moniker, in the last 5-10 years or so, has gotten more of a moniker of not adjusting over the course of a season or series, more importantly, than Mike Budenholzer. Where did Darvin Ham come from? Mike Budenholzer's staff. That's where he got it from. It's what he's under that umbrella. As I continue to say, when the Bucks won the championship in 2021, when Coach Bud was there, I said then, I certainly say now, they won that title in spite of Mike Budenholzer. It's one of the few championships where I'm like, oh yeah, the coach really didn't help him at all. He really didn't. Giannis was awesome. Middleton hit big shots. Drew Holiday was great on both ends. That's why the Bucks beat Phoenix in the 21 finals. It wasn't because of anything big that Coach Bud did. It wasn't a Steve Kerr or a Michael Malone or a Nick Nurse or somebody like that. Not even close. A Ty Lue. If you remember, 2021 conference semifinals, I've said it over and over. I'll say it again. Remember, they're playing the Nets. The Bucks are playing the Nets. And in that series, Harden gets hurt. Kyrie gets hurt. There's only one guy can beat you. One guy in the whole floor can beat you. His name is the guy you're about to coach, Kevin Durant. And you play Kevin Durant straight up in Game 5 when Harden's out there on half a hamstring and Kyrie's not in there to begin with. And KD goes nuts on you. I think drops like 49 in Game 5. You lose that. You win Game 6. In Game 7, as we all remember, Harden can't beat you because he's hurt, and he's James Harden in the playoffs. Kyrie's not there. One guy can beat you. You play him straight up with P.J. Tucker, who's 6'5" the whole game. P.J. Tucker in his peak was a really good defender. Can't guard KD one-on-one. Can't. Nobody can. At least try and double. And if KD's, as we know, if KD's toenail is an inch further back, the Nets beat the Bucks in that series. And if you remember, the Bucks advance in the Eastern, play the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Hawks went up 2-1 in that series, and then Trae Young got hurt. So again, Trae Young's going crazy on you. He's the only guy that can beat you. He has a great Game 1. They're up 2-1. Then Trae goes down, and the Bucks end up winning that series. So we saw it last year in the playoffs against the Heat. Bucks are up double digits going in the fourth quarter, losing in Game 4 against the Heat. Up double digits at home in the fourth quarter against the Heat again. Lost that one in overtime, and that's what cost him his job. So I don't think the Suns have upgraded at head coach. I think they've, again, taken another step back. And it's all because of their owner. And this is the typical, listen, I don't know what Matt Ishbia's background is. I don't know if he comes from money or all that. But we see often in a lot of walks of life where once somebody makes it big, they blow all their money. Matt Ishbia has not obviously blown his money. He's a billionaire, for crying out loud. But it's the situation where a guy comes in, he thinks he's going to outsmart the system. He's going to essentially run his basketball team like he's on 2K. Let's just put a bunch of scores on the team, and that's going to carry us to a title. No, it couldn't even get you a playoff win, much less series win. So, listen, I think I don't know if it'll be this offseason. It could be in the middle of next season. I think a KD trade request is not far off. Now, I'm curious what the Suns are going to do because they're kind of boxed in. I mean, they have no assets. The only way to even try to rebuild the team is to move I don't think anybody's going to trade for Beal because of that contract and because of where he is in the age stage of his career, health-wise. I would not want to trade Booker because that guy's been my franchise cornerstone for 8-9 years now. He's still great. You just played him in a position he's not comfortable playing. Do you consider moving KD? Because again, too, it's the last point I'll make before we get out of here. Coach Bud got a 5-year deal. Like that. This isn't a 1 year. Like, remember when the Lakers were, I could be wrong, weren't they wanting to give Ty Lue like a short, like 3-year deal? They wouldn't give him that fourth because if Ty Lue didn't work, which was a horrible move by the front office. The fact that the Suns are giving Bud a 5-year deal tells me they're like, hey, if this thing breaks up, and I don't even know if Matt Ishbia is thinking this way, but if this thing breaks up, you're still here. Like, you've got the job security, which in that case, I get him taking that job, but this is yet another odd move. I mean, I think there's some pretty good coaching candidates out there, and they go, Budenholzer? Okay. He's got 2 Coach of the Year awards, but again, Spo doesn't have any. Think about it. Eric Spoelstra doesn't have a single Coach of the Year. How does that happen? I don't know. I think Phil Jackson has 1. He's the greatest coach ever. He's got like 1 Coach of the Year. John Rivera, shaking my head. Frank should have gotten 1 more year. Again, I don't think the Suns' struggles were because of Vogel. I really don't. I don't think it should have fired Monty to begin with. John, Mike is not going to last the 5 years either. The Suns are going to be paying a lot of coaches. Oh, yeah. I guess they're still paying Monty. They're going to be paying Vogel, and now they're going to be paying Coach Bud. Oof. Listen, you made your bed. You're going to have to lay in it, Matt Ishbia. Patrick, 5 years, $50 million. Did Ishbia not see how Coach Bud's tenure ended in Milwaukee? Another sunset in the making. I don't think, listen, the sun doesn't set. I don't know if it's coming up. Because for the sun to come up, there's got to be hope involved. Like, right, when you think about the sun coming up in the day, it's like, oh, this is a new day, a new opportunity. As currently constructed, I don't really know what the exciting newness of the Phoenix Suns is unless they get a point guard. I mean, I don't know who any of the point guards available in free agency would be. I'm not sure they can move anybody for unless they were to trade Durant, which that wouldn't make sense to trade KD just to get a point guard. I don't know. They're really boxed in big time. All right, that's all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We are this close, ladies and gentlemen, to getting to 1,000 subscribers. Last I checked, we're at 986. We're 14, last I checked at least, 14 subscribers away from 1K. So if you have not subscribed, just takes a couple seconds. Big red subscribe button down there. Hit it, and you're part of the Carving It Up family. If you have subscribed, thank you so much for your support. I cannot tell you how much that it means to me and to everybody who's involved with Carving It Up. Please tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody except for your sleeping cat. That I don't recommend. Don't wake the cat up. He or she will be very cranky. Outside of that, tell everybody else about the show and to subscribe. And also, just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts. You can find us at the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. You saw Patrick Brown in the comments. He writes some great articles for the Grid's website. Be sure to go check that out. The link to that is on the Instagram account at the Grid Network. John Rivera also too in the comments. Fan perspective. He's not on the Grid, but I love John. John, love his show. So shout out to him as well. He's the best. All right. We will see you on Monday's show. Please sure to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. This is an issue that impacts all of us, wherever you lean, right, left, center. No matter what anybody tries to gaslight you on, oh, this isn't a problem at all, or oh, there's only one way to solve this problem. BS. There's a number of ways to address this, but we got to do what we got to do, not only at the ballot box this November, but in terms of being vocal in our communities to ensure that our leaders take care of what needs to be taken care of, and that is addressing this huge issue. All right. See you on Monday. A lot of great NBA playoff basketball this weekend. NFL schedule comes out next Wednesday. I heard there's going to be some Netflix games on Christmas. I'm very excited about that. So should be a fun week ahead. Be safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace up. And happy Mother's Day, y'all. Love you, mama. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.